God is infinitely vulnerable because everything about him is infinite. Well, then, if God is just infinitely anything, then he must also be infinitely evil. Tread carefully with this, man. Good observation. If God is infinite, then everything about him is infinite. Infinitely good, infinitely smart, infinitely vulnerable. Why not infinitely evil? Well, the first thing is he evil to begin with? If God was evil, then he would be infinitely evil, of course. Not partially anything. Vulnerability, we established, is a positive and it's a strength. So God is certainly vulnerable, well, then he must be infinitely vulnerable. But God is not evil, so he's not infinitely evil. But that leaves us with the question, if God is not evil, then where does evil come from? There can't be another creator. And evil cannot be the product of human beings, something that God does not have but human beings do. That's not a rational argument. So where does evil come from? Obviously, it comes from God. God created everything, doesn't mean he is everything. God created wisdom, and he is wise. God created time, but God is not time. He is timeless, right? So how do we work all this in? There are certain things God created because it's in keeping with who he is. He is, in the spiritual, godly, intangible world, what he is, and he creates a continuum, something in the physical that represents what he is in the spiritual. But then God also creates things that are, in fact, opposite to who he is. So here's the difference. There are things that God creates because it's a valid, godly thing in the spiritual. It should exist in the physical as well. Like kindness is a godly quality, it should exist in the physical. There are animals that are kind to their children, to their offspring. So it exists even in the physical. But then there are things God creates not as an end in itself because it is valid, but as a means to an end. Either to give us freedom of choice or to help us appreciate the good because we can contrast it with what is not good. Or he creates the bad and leaves it up to us to transform that which is bad into something good. So much of creation is not what it's meant to be. The way God created it is not the way he wants it to remain. And that's the meaning of the words where the Torah says, Shabbos, at the end of the 6 days, God had finished all that he created to do. Created to do. What does that mean? He created it in an unfinished state for us to do the rest, to make it into what it's meant to be. Right now, it just has the potential. In that way, we actually partner with God. So God created evil. Of course, can't come in from any other source. So, yes, God created evil. God created darkness. That's the beginnings of evil. But the purpose is not for the evil to exist as evil, but for it to become eventually transformed and elevated and refined into something positive. So, infinite evil, what would that mean? Have we ever seen infinite evil? If by infinite evil you mean evil that will last for infinity of time, no. Evil is by its very definition a temporary condition, because the evil is meant to stop being evil through our efforts. So infinite in time, no. Infinite in ugliness, yes. You know, just when we think people have gotten as bad as possible, they get worse. There is no limit to how evil people can be, which means there's no limit to how much evil exists in the world. And all of that infinite evil is meant to become infinite good. So evil is not infinite in its shelf life. It's not going to remain evil forever, but there is no limit to how evil can be. When that gets transformed to good, you have a whole lot of good. Now, the very definition, what constitutes evil? Anything I don't like? Anything that bothers me is evil? Anyone who bothers me is evil? Evil means things that go against God's purpose in creation. If you further the purpose, that's good, positive. If you go in the wrong direction, if you take the world away from God's purpose, that's called evil. And what makes it evil? It's in opposition to God's purpose. Without that definition, we would be lost. What makes you so sure that murder is evil? What makes you so sure that mass murder is evil? What makes you so sure that killing children is evil? In fact, how do you know anything is evil? Truly evil. You can say murder is destructive, it's a waste of a life. Okay, is that evil? What's evil? A horrible waste of life. That's a definition for evil? Evil means destructive to the purpose for which God created his world. If God didn't care, nothing would be evil. If you don't believe in God, nothing's evil. And nothing is holy. So the definition of good and bad, of positive and negative, has to be measured against God's intention. Otherwise, we have no way of measuring it at all. So did God create things that go against his intention? Yes, of course. Every sin goes against his intention. Did he create that? Of course he created it. God created pork and tells Jews not to eat it. So what makes it wrong for a Jew to eat pork? Goes against God's plan. Is it really terrible to go against God's plan? Can you think of anything worse than preventing the world from being what it's meant to be? Frustrating the entire purpose of creation? That's not a little detail. That's the whole story. So that's what we call evil. Now, there are certain evils that the human spirit, because we are created in God's image, also objects. Certain things God considers evil, the human spirit doesn't see it. Like eating ham for a Jew. I don't see what's so evil about it. But harming children, even a human being, finds it deeply disturbing. What's a better word for evil? Disturbing, objectionable, uh, horrifying. All of that means absolutely unacceptable. We can't tolerate certain evils because we're created in God's image. And that's why we keep talking about this. If you find it objectionable and you're a finite human being, God finds it infinitely objectionable. If it makes you sick to your stomach, that's just a physical symptom. What does it do to God? To see his world violated. That's what evil means. But we have freedom of choice. We can be as good as we want to be, and we can be as bad as we want to be. Is God infinitely evil? God is not evil. He created evil for it to be transformed into good so that even the evil becomes part of godliness and there is nothing left out. That's called oneness. Oneness. That the light and the dark become a day, not in conflict with each other, complementary to each other. Because even the dark has to serve a purpose of light. We have a Sunday night program for VIPs that you might be interested in. It's informal, it's questions and answers, it's conversation. It's really relaxed, it's really pleasant, enjoyable, informative, and kind of community-like. It's a Sunday night program, there's a Wednesday morning program for the VIPs, and there's a Wednesday night program. All of it just conversation, casual, laid back, unscripted. So join us, take a look, click the link below, and see which of the three suits you best, and join us for some enjoyable conversation.